This meeting is going to be recorded, and please take that into consideration. Please use the channel, so you can use English or Estonian. And also you have the instructions in English.
The Ministry of Social Affairs of Estonia. And I'd like to say that this meeting is being recorded, so please take this into account. We will later also upload the video to YouTube for those who could not be here today with us. And we also provide interpretation of this seminar, both from English to Estonian and from Estonian to English. To use this option, please select interpretation from the panel down. So I'll switch back to Estonian. If you'd like to continue listening to me, please select interpretation from below. Tänasel veebiseminaril me esitame.
In today's web seminar, we are producing a web seminar which was financed by European Commission and which also was had by OECD. And the aim of the project was to assess the help that is employment services and to make the best solutions. We are very happy that this project has materialized and that the aim of this seminar is to present to you the results of the project. And you would have the presenters. We have 3 presenters. It's very high level. Nava from European Commission and Scarpetta and Kiik. So, and thereafter you can ask questions, and in order to ask questions, we would like to invite you that you can raise your hands. You can indicate that you would like to ask questions. If you do so, then I will give that to you. And thereafter, you can ask questions. The alternative is that you can also make your please also use our chat on Lauritz. I can say she has invited us to react to a question, but without further delay, I would like to give the floor to Martin ALMP to give to present his opinion. Thank you.
Mario, the floor is yours. Your microphone seems to be off right now.
Thank you very much, and many thanks for your introduction, Sten. Thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be here with you today. As you may know, it's a bit of a special day in Brussels for DG reform, and I will tell you in a moment. But first of all, the event that we have today really marks the conclusion of an 18-month-long cooperation between the Estonia Ministry of Social Affairs, the OECD, and the European Commission. And I think it's worth to pause a moment today. We will not pause too long, but it's worth to pause a moment today to understand the significance of all of that. And I'm very happy to be here with you, with the OECD, with good old friend Stefano Scarpetta with the Employment Insurance Fund and all the other. As I said, today is a bit of a special day for us in DG Reform. The reason is that literally 2 hours ago, the program for 2021 has been adopted by the Commission. And so that in few minutes, I need to literally run in the building in front for the press conference. So apologies, but after my initial introduction, I will need, unfortunately, to leave you. And but take this as a sign of the importance that I assign to your event, that even on a day like today, where virtually I've eliminated all other activities, I've kept this one because I thought the project was really worth. Now, having said all of that, and in particular, I also must say I appreciate very much the engagement that came from all of you, in spite, I understand, of the COVID situation getting more and more difficult with more increasing measures. I understand the ministers will be with us later, so I really appreciate that. I want to pass you 3 messages in my short introduction. Message number 1 is, of course, the program that we run here in DG Reform, and how much member states are, let's say, happy is a banal word, but how much member states are satisfied to work with us in that respect. Why is that? What makes these member state satisfaction? I think we have identified it to several elements, but probably the 3 most important one are, one, certainly that we try to be very faithful to our mandate, which is a mandate for tailor-made assistance. And I think this case has shown very much how much we have tried to be tailor-made to what you requested. 2 is that what we do, as it is well known, we don't bring money to member states, we bring expertise. And what we try to do is to bring the best expertise available in the market. In a way, we go in the expertise market and we search for the best expertise available. And 3 is because once this is done, the results of whatever project is done, we try to make sure that those results they travel across member states, and the benefits that for sure you derive in Estonia are also possibly exported to other countries. And as you know very well, for this work, for your report, we did exactly that. We took some experience from other countries, and of course, we have adapted it, tailor-made. I was saying at the beginning, we have adapted it to the situation. And once that has been adapted, we were able to help you. The second point I want to take is that what is essential is to have a sustainable attitude to structural reform. What does it mean, a sustainable attitude to structural reform? It means to make a plan for a reform which then can be pursued, which then can be continued. And I think the report that the OECD, that Stefano Scarpetta will show clearly shows a number of factors, but let me point to 2 which are quite clear and which become a challenge to active labor market policies. 1 is obviously demography, and 2 is digitalization of the society on the supply side, which calls for an increased response of the demand in terms of digitalization. When you put the 2 things together with demography, you see the challenge. What is good, and I think that is a very good news, is that this challenge has been recognized early on. And I think the Estonian government, and in particular your ministry, has made this one of the priorities. And then the third point, you will not be surprised me to say it, but the third point is something to which we are very attached at the Commission, which is the point on fit for the future. You have heard this expression. We have already done a first report at the beginning of this year about that. You have certainly heard from myself, but even from infinitely more important people than myself, like the president, the commissioners, the vice presidents, the concept of resilience, the concept of being able to do something which helps us now to come out from the current situation where we are, but then ensure that this is good for the future. We say smart, we say resilience for the future. What we want to do is really, and I think this report shows it, to build a labor market institution that are efficient, that are responsive, and that they are able to take us in the future. There is one aspect of the report on which I want to pause, and all the rest, Stefano Scarpetta will do it much better than me. But there is one aspect which is the link between the population and the labor market, and the analysis shows that around a quarter of the working age population in Estonia is weakly attached to the labor market. And this is clearly an area where there is a sizable potential for improvement. But this, once again, the sizable potential for improvement should be linked to our ability to be fit for the type of work that is necessary, not only today, but in 5 years, in 10 years, and so on. Not for nothing, our main instrument, the RRF, the Recovery and Resilience Facility, is called exactly like that. It's called Recovery and Resilience Facility, just because we want to come out of the crisis now, as soon as possible, recovery. But then we want to make sure to have all the instruments that would allow us to face any future further crisis. So if there are other crises, we should be able to face it. And that's why the emphasis on green, on digital, and on all of that. I can conclude on this, and I want to thank you for the cooperation. I want to wholeheartedly thank the minister that I understand has just joined now while I was speaking. So really many thanks to be with us today for such an important event. Apologies again for the fact that I have to leave, but as I said, press conference to announce to the press everything that we have adopted this morning, including many projects for Estonia. So I think that is good. But of course, do not hesitate to get in touch, to stay in touch with me and with my team, with the Commission. There is the representation in Tallinn. Everything you need, we are here. And with this, really many thanks and apologies for having to leave. Thank you very much, Sten.
Suur tänu härra Maarja Navale nende heade remarkide eest ja sissejuhatuse eest. Ja annaksin edasi sõna.
Thank you to Maarja for these welcoming words. And now we have the following present.
So Stefano, the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much, Stan. Let me try to share my screen for the presentation. I hope you can see it. Good afternoon to everyone. It's truly a great pleasure for me to be here and to have the opportunity to present this report. Let me start by thanking my good friend Mario Nava, the Director-General of DG Reform, who was able to be with us at least for the first part of our meeting. And of course, the Minister, who I understand just joined us, and at the same time, all the staff of the Ministry for what has been an excellent collaboration in the preparation of the report that the OECD, together with the European Commission, has developed with the Estonian authorities. As was said before, the project was funded by the European Union Structural Reform Support Program in a period of from July 2019 to actually January 2021. And today we are officially presenting the report on connecting people with jobs, improving the provision of active labor market policy in Estonia. This is actually the 7th report of this series by the OECD. And as was said also by Mario Nava, provides an assessment of how well active labor market policy helped all groups to move into productive and rewarding jobs, and actually includes a number of policy recommendations that we hope the Estonian government will consider. Let me also mention that today with us, there are the main authors of this report, Teodora Xenogianni, Anne Laurenton, and Marius Lusk. They are the ones who have actually worked very closely with many colleagues in Estonia. I would like to thank them for what has been a very effective collaboration also from our side. The first point I want to say that, as I said, the ultimate objective of a project like this was to contribute to increase, to strengthen employment rate in Estonia, but also enhance the transition towards not only jobs, but good jobs or better jobs. And to achieve this, the report first identifies scope for improvement in the way in which institutions work, together with the legal framework for the active labor market policies. The report also identifies possible improvement, in particular with respect to outreach and targeting of the active labor market policy. The report benefits from a different type of analysis. Let me say that one of the main highlights in terms of the quality of this report is the fact that we have been able to use a large-scale data based on linked administrative data from 20 different registers. And this actually made it possible to identify personal and professional circumstances in great detail. The analysis also of the legal test regulating the active labor market policy, which is based on input from Gabriel Tavits and Rein Murakas from the University of Tartu. And of course, as also Mario said before, the analysis of international good practices from other European countries, Germany, Slovenia, Denmark, as well as Iceland. And this was done through a number of workshops and written inputs. And last but certainly not least, the report in front of you also benefited from numerous consultations with the different Estonia stakeholders that I would like to thank very much, because the inputs has been extremely important for the collaboration throughout this long period, but also of course for the preparation of the report itself. Now, when we look at the labor market, in this chart, you have the employment rate among the working age population. And you can see very clearly that just before the COVID-19, in the first quarter of 2020, the employment rate in Estonia was at 75.5%, which is certainly higher than the European average and actually the OECD average. Not surprising, in Estonia, like in all countries, the COVID-19 has a very deep impact on the labor market, on our economies. But still in the third quarter of 2020, which is the last observation we have available, the employment rate stood at 73%, which is still significantly above, of course, the OECD and the European average. However, despite this good performance, the labor market in Estonia faces a number of structural challenges, which are listed on the right-hand side of this chart. Of course, as also Maria Nava said, the population is shrinking and aging quickly. Actually, the working age population between 20 and 64 is expected to decrease by 22% between 2020 and 2050. Economic and labor market difference across regions. The unemployment rate, for example, is 12.3% in northern Estonia against a 6.8%, about half of it, in the whole country. And there is a high degree of mismatch in between the skills of individuals and those who are in need, in particular with reference to the low skilled. The unemployment also faced with high poverty risk, 52% in 2018, and they tend to be characterized by low skill levels. And of course, and this is not just for Estonia, for all countries, there is still a significant uncertainty as to the way in which the COVID-19 crisis will unfold. We have a lot of good news about the vaccines, but we know the distribution of vaccine is still a challenge in many countries. Let me go back to one of the points I was mentioning before, and this is about the difference we do observe within the country. The data analysis showed that despite strong labor market policy, active labor market policy need to be more widespread. 26% of the 15-64 years old do not have solid labor market attachment. They have no employment, are in unstable jobs or jobs with low pay, although they actually could work more. The share actually stands at 32% in the Ida Viruma and around 30% in the southern counties versus 23% in RU and the EU. The people who lack a solid labor market attachment face a number of different obstacles. 68% of them have low skills, no professional education, or below upper secondary education. 64% face family-related challenges, care obligation in particular. We'll go back to this point. 42% have social integration obstacles. They've been out of employment for a pretty long time and face potentially severe challenges to integrate into the society or have a migratory background. Typically, people face several obstacles at the same time, although the correlation between a different obstacle is sometimes low, which means actually for the need for targeting to actually address what are the most important challenges they are facing. When we look at the reach out of the Public Employment Service, in this chart, you have the share of unemployed registered at the Public Employment Office, which is somewhat lower than the average of the OECD countries, and the share of those who are unemployed who contacted the Public Employment Service for seeking work, which stood at about 50%. This is the case despite some clear incentive to register with the Public Employment Service in Estonia. The health insurance for registered job seekers are indeed granted health insurance if they register with the Unemployment Insurance Fund, the unemployment benefit and unemployment allowance, the work ability allowance. And in order to receive this benefit, the individual has to be registered. And of course, access to active labor market policy, because only those who are registered or in contact with the Public Employment Service can benefit from the active labor market policies to improve their labor market situation. Whether people who lack solid employment to receive active labor market policy or not varies depending on actually the obstacle they face. In this chart, you have the obstacle on the horizontal axis, the skills problem, geographical location, family, health, and integrations and motivation. And then you see the type of intervention, general intervention, and the more specific intervention. All obstacles considered, 40% of people with no solid employment receive at least a general active labor market policy support, such as a job mediation. The share is much higher among people with health obstacles. About 60% of them receive some type of active labor market policy support. And this high share of people in with health obstacle is in part the result of the reform that took place in 2016, the workability reform, that widened the set of policies and extended them for people also with reduced work ability. Active labor market policy participation is actually low among people with social integration obstacles, which is in most cases long history of non-employment. Only 35% of them receive any type of active labor market policy support, and less than 25% specific support beyond labor market counseling. And these show clearly that active labor market policy don't reach out some people which are further apart, further away from the labor market. The good news is that once a person is in contact with the Unemployment Insurance Fund, the Estonia PS, they do receive at least general active labor market support, and they are also referred to specific support in the vast majority of the case. That's why one of the main messages of this report is indeed the need to reach out, to do the outreach, to reach out those who are not in contact with the Public Employment Service. So what are some of the main assessments that we have identified in this report that we'd like to share with you, together with the recommendation to try to address them? In the previous slide, I highlighted the number of challenges in reaching out to all people in need of active labor market policy support. Let me turn in what can be the main way to address them. The Unemployment Insurance Fund has a key role to play by continuing to strengthen its outreach to people who are far from the labor market. Let me say this is not easy. It's an issue that many countries are facing because these people sometimes are difficult to identify and perhaps even more difficult to reach and to motivate. In this case, we believe that municipalities, who are the first contact point for these people, are the best place to reach out to them. And therefore, sound cooperation between the Estonian Public Employment Service and municipalities, in our view, is an important step for going forward. In light also of the demographic changes with the significant and rapid aging of the population, the role of older workers becomes increasingly important. And therefore, the Estonian Public Employment Service should increase its outreach to the older workers and provide specific active labor market policy support to promote longer working lives. Estonia has developed a very rich basket of active labor market policies, and I think the overall assessment also from in-depth evaluation is that they are generally quite effective. Nevertheless, there is some scope for improvement, again, on the targeting, as the target not only does work well in some areas, but doesn't work so well in other areas. Again, in this slide, you have the obstacles that people face, skills, integration, health, geography, and you see the specific or the targeted support they do receive. Good news, if you look at those who have health issues, they tend to receive targeted support that address the specific challenges they face. In other areas, you see, for example, on skills, or in other areas, you see that actually targeting is less strong. So I think for all individuals facing specific obstacles beyond general active labor market policy, it is very important to try to tailor-made intervention to the specific need they face. This is a way to really help them overcome these obstacles and be able to reconnect with the labor market fully. On the recommendation and on targeting, let me just make a general point about the fact that given the main objective of reaching out to those who are further away from the labor market, there is a need for a holistic approach. Unemployment Insurance Fund, the Social Insurance Board, the Health Insurance Fund, and municipalities should really work together with strong cooperation to offer a whole kind of an integrated support with a one-stop shop. Second, improving data exchange across institutions will be very important to help connect the threads and identify people in need of support. For the specific case of skill-related active labor market policies, the employment and education policy side should cooperate more to optimize the design of adult learning programs. That is, the skills that are developed correspond to the skills which are in need. Try to close the mismatch between the job seekers and the jobs that are available in the market. Ensure that training programs do not discourage the low-skilled workers, which means also identify ways to increase the take-up among the low skills and prevent the dropout. Sometimes for the low skill, the issue is really the motivation for them to participate. To support the vulnerable groups, case workers should be allowed to allocate more time to them to improve the coverage and the targeting amongst those groups who are more difficult to place into the labor market. As part of this project, we have also analyzed the institutional regulatory setup for active labor market policy provision, as it determines the capacity of the system to respond quickly and effectively to changing labor market needs. We have found that the institutional setup produces good outcomes, and in particular, the tripartite balance between the government, the employers, and the employees ensures a high degree of consensus. Therefore, it is desirable, in our view, to keep and the main aspect of the institutional setup. The legal framework permits good result as well, but in our view is perhaps too complex. Some active labor market policy are regulated in details in the law, often are regulated also by decrees. And this makes the administration possibly burdensome, and there is no advantage in keeping the system as is. The report recommends that the act adopted by the parliament should perhaps focus only on the key aspect of the active labor market policy provision, and the details on the provision themselves should be regulated more flexibly in lower level legal text. Finally, the workability reform has allowed to improve coordination across the policy fields, and Estonia should continue on this path and further enhance the coordination between different institutions. This brings me to the last slide and basically the main observation, the main result, the key messages of this report. Overall, the provision of active labor market policy in Estonia works well. The good functioning of the active labor market policy contributes also to good labor market outcomes, despite, of course, the strong impact of the crisis. Nevertheless, outreach to people further from the labor market remains low, and active labor market policy should be fine-tuned to reach more people in need and address the obstacle they are facing in a more targeted way. There is also scope to improve the legal setup. It should be redesigned to lower complexity and increase the flexibility for the system to be able to respond to quickly evolving labor market needs, as we have seen during the COVID crisis. Better coordination and cooperation across the policy field and institutions is also needed to make the active labor market policy even more effective. In particular, the cooperation between municipalities and the Unemployment Insurance Fund should be strengthened to ensure a comprehensive support. And the capacity of municipalities need to increase and priority change to be the first respondents and support vulnerable groups with social welfare services, cooperate with other institutions, and provide data on the action to be shared with the other institutions. These are, in a nutshell, the main messages of our report. Let me thank you again for your attention. I very much look forward for our discussion today, together with my colleague, the main authors of the report, Theodora Xenogianni, Anne Lorrington, and Marius Luske. Thank you. Over to you, Sten.
Suur tänu OECD-le väga hea ning põhjaliku analüüsi eest ning Stefanole suurepärase kokkuvõtte eest.
Thank you for this nice analysis. I would encourage you to ask questions and also receive answers, but I would like to also give another
Räägib sellest analüüsist.
minister who is going to share his views.
Hea tänud. Austatud härra Scarpetta, härra Nava, projekti meeskonnakirjanikud.
Dear ministers, dear colleagues who have shared and who are listening.
Thank you very much for all your contribution and all the necessary information and analysis that has been done in good cooperation with our ministry. Mul on väga hea meel, et see projekt on teoks saanud.
I am very pleased that this project has been committed and we have the best international support and of course OECD. Thanks to this interview. One of the priorities to find a job or to keep a job, or one of our jobs is to provide support, and we need to see how we can provide this help to find the shortcomings, to find the so to find the best in view of COVID situation. This has put us in a very different situation. We have seen it from previous economic crises, and the measures that we are developing and that we are offering, we are more flexible, and we need to be more flexible, because this affects employers who create jobs, and this concerns everybody. And what has been pointed out are these long-term challenges that will not stop with our COVID challenge. We have had challenges before, and this is the knowledge about our employment factors that so many people have lost their jobs, and in long term our population is diminishing, so we don't have employment shortages, so we don't have workers. Therefore, we still are facing with employment. We need to face both problems. People who are forced out of the labor market and the ones who perhaps should increase their skills. We also need competition in European context. Yes, OECD pointed out that this inactive people who have low employment, low income, 3,600. This actually in our Estonian context is huge. And they also were offered services from the employment centers to find a more stable job. And this is something that perhaps we cannot use in the best possible way. But many people have low skills, or the skills that are not usable or not suitable, but this can be improved. We have talked about it for ages, that we can improve our skills. And we also talk about care. We talk about 7,000 who need care. And there are people who need to provide this care. And they have been away from the labor market. There are regional differences. But of course, in addition to this negative talk, we have started work, and we have pointed out the aspects that positive. We have a choice on our labor market, and the people who are in labor market office, we need to think how to reach them if we haven't reached them yet. Maybe there are some young people who have not, who do not study, who do not work. We also need to think about regional, sectoral aspects. And naturally, in our ministry, health sector, and also broadband. This is just not closed in our ministry. This has to have a broad aspect: transport, education, economy, social security. The package is much broader to keep yourselves active on the labor market and to manage your work and having a. And of course, there are some practical tips. Again, the actions to make the services available, and certainly all this bureaucracy and the management issues. These are for us, but also we need to target our service better, because we are in a country and our employment records per regions are very different. And when we have long-term unemployment records, then they may differ drastically. I do agree with the report. Different services, different things to services, to reports, to reactions. They need flexibility. We need to be operative to support
muutustega kiiresti toimetulekul. Ja samal ajal
and therefore it is sometimes difficult to communicate to the public, to make it reasonable. Sometimes it's slowly communicated, sometimes it's communicated by the law, but the processes take time, a year, half a year, and all the norms and the fulfillment of the laws also means that the person has to understand the law, and our board is advising people, both employees and employees, that this communication would be very helpful. We do think that it's appropriate that when we think about our regulations, that we start the process of a new law, and these new services will be more accessible. And I believe that if it is work in process, we need to do it. We need also extra support, extra advice through OECD or experts from outside. Even though we have some very strong structural units, we can still make them better. We need to work for it. We have good solutions and sometimes not so good solutions. We need to make them more competitive, and also employers, employees, their lives visible. Thank you very much for this report. Thank you for the overview. I was just delayed by the cabinet meeting, minister, and I need to combine these two jobs. Some are more direct, some are less direct, but I need to plan my time. Thank you and welcome, and thank you.
Suur tänu, Tanel, küsimuste ettekande eest ja nüüd on.
Thank you, Tanel. Now it's time for questions. You can ask questions. You can raise your hand. Participants button and the button. And the second alternative is we have already received some questions. Do we have the first grade person who will ask the first question? Okay, I will start. And Stefan.
Okei, siis mina ei märka lihtsalt, aga Raul, palun, sõna sulle.
Aitäh, Raul Jaamets, Tartu Ülikool. Kas ma võin küsida otse
Thank you, Raul. I can ask in English.
For very interesting presentation. I have two related questions. They are related more to financial issues of the active labor market policy in Estonia. As in my knowledge, most or the big variety of our active labor market programs are thanks to the EU funding and the EU structural funds. So in your opinion, the first question, how sustainable financially is our active labor market policy in midterm perspective, for instance? And the second question is that I got a feeling that sometimes variety, we have a lot of active labor market programs, sometimes very specific. So variety is money driven. As we got some opportunities from EU, we created our programs. How you comment this is how much it is kind of based on needs, and how often it is money driven if we look very big number of active labor market programs in Estonia. Thanks.
Stan, would you like me to answer the questions as they come or to collect them?
Yes, Stefano, that would be great.
Thank you very much. Big thanks to the minister. I think his remarks were extremely interesting and very much complemented also the report. So again, a big thanks to him, a big thank to all the colleagues from the ministry for this collaboration. Raul, Ahmed, you raised a couple of important questions. First of all, good to see you. I think it's been a long time since we last saw each other. In terms of the resources available for active labor market policies, I think in terms of spending as a share of GDP, we are more or less closer to the average of European countries. So in terms of resources available, seems to be fine. About the sustainability, this is something I think we should have discussed also with the colleagues from the European Commission. I think this funding from the European funds has been very important to be able to enable a country like Estonia to scale up the resources, which I think basically the overall assessment of our report is that they are quite efficiently used, I would say. Of course, it is important also to build the capacity within the country to maintain these important policies. In terms of the fact that there are different type of programs, two answers to that. I think it is always extremely important to evaluate each individual program regularly to make sure that actually they are fit for purpose. We know very well that our labor market evolves, the needs may be changing, but also some policy that may sound good in theory might not work so well in practice. So evaluation, in my view, and not just a general evaluation about overall spending, but I would say evaluation of specific programs, in my view, is very important. At the same time, and from my understanding of the interpretation of the minister, flexibility and adaptability is also very important. I think the COVID-19 crisis has got all of us a little bit by surprise. And I think in Estonia, like in most, if not all the other countries, there's been a lot of adaptation. I think it is important to actually make sure that the focus of different policy evolves with a change in labor market condition. You can really address the challenges that may arise or may change to some extent with changing macroeconomic conditions. I think Estonia, again, has done quite an impressive work, for example, with the short-time work schemes, which have been put in place and scale up to a significant extent quite rapidly. But I think this issue of flexibility, in our view, is very important. And this is actually what brought us to the recommendation to make sure that there is no overlap between different type of laws and regulation governing on the active labor market policies, whereby general policy set up by Parliament can set up the broad objective of the active labor market policy and then leave to lower level regulation, basically the implementation and the adaptation to changing conditions, which is the case we find in other countries. So again, on both points, I think your question absolutely valid. I hope that the report and what I've just been saying provide also some answers. Over to you, Stan.
Thank you very much. Tiit Papp on samuti tõstnud käe. Palun, teil on võimalus esitada küsimus.
Tiit has raised his question. Hand.
Tere kõigile. Esiteks aitäh, et kutsusite mind.
Thank you that you invited me. I'm from the Deaf Union. I'm the first time at this seminar of OECD, and I'm really, really glad. Some information was lost. There was one question that I would like to ask.
Kas OECD raportis on käsitletud lähemalt ka just
Does OECD report also deal with the employment of disabled people? How was this information gathered, or how were they?
Suur tänu.
report?
So Stefano, the question was to you.
Yeah. No, thank you very much for this very important question. I will start the answer, but then perhaps my colleague who have been again following the project more closely can also chip in on that point. We have been able in this report, more than in, I would say, any of the other report assignment we have produced, been able to use very detailed administrative data from 20 different sources, which enable us to really go deeper and look at different individuals with different characteristics. In a couple of the slides I show you, we look at how active labor market policy are targeted to individuals who are in need of specific support, including health specific. They're facing health obstacles and they need well-targeted support. And I think in this group, of course, we should include individuals with a different type of disability to enable them to participate to the extent possible into the labor market. So the data we had allow us to go deeper and to understand really the targeting at the really fine granular level. I think the other point that emerges in the report, as you have seen, is also that when the main issue for people to connect with jobs is health problems, the active labor market policy seems to be doing a good job in the sense that there are very specific targeted interventions that potentially address the specific problem they're facing, which might not be the case for other groups. For example, those who have social barriers. I mean, there are other issues that prevent them to participate in the labor market, for example, care responsibilities. So our general assessment is that for people like people with disabilities, the active labor market policy seems to be well targeted and therefore could potentially offer adequate support for them to try to reintegrate into employment. I don't know whether Theodora Anne would like also to complement this answer.
Yeah, maybe I just add to the definition of people with health challenges in the report. So we use the variables for disabilities as well as reduced workability, and also we had data on the number of prescriptions. When we saw that the data indicated that the person has extreme problems with health, then we did not include these people in the group of people who could be very easily or more easier to target by active labor market policies and help to the labor market, as we assume that these people are above all in need of quite intensive healthcare measures and social services first before they could potentially move to the group who are a bit closer to the labor market and could be helped via active labor market policies. I hope this made it a bit clearer.
Thank you, Anne, very much. Indeed.
Thank you very much. I cannot see any other hands raised, but we have a question in chat from Jano Järve. And I guess the question is to the ministry instead of OECD. And the question is, he asks, how much simpler can the legislative framework of the ALMPs be if we still want to use EU funds, given that a lot of legislative complexity is driven by reliance on EU funds? So I'll start answering myself, and then I'll give the floor to Kristi Suur from the ministry. And perhaps then OECD would also like to complement it later on. So in short, we think that is only partially so, because the EU doesn't demand member states to have separate legislative acts for EU-funded active labor market policies. Instead, it's a choice that we have done domestically. And now that we are entering a new period of EU funds, 2021 to 2027, and we do not have the new version of the structural struktuuritoetuste seadus, the law governing the EU funds, then it's we can do it other way around as well. Kristi, perhaps you will take over then, and I see Tiit Papp also requested us to translate it into Estonia. I'll do it later on.
Võib-olla aitäh, Sten, ja aitäh küsimuse eest.
Thank you for the question. I will answer in Estonian. As was mentioned, this regulative confusion is partly derived from the logic of structural funds. Yes, we have this division regulation. We have a zoning program. We have structural funds regulation, and they're all different. But actually, I can't very exact answers then, because part of these intergovernmental regulations and sometimes simplifications on European level move forward. So yes, I would hope that this system would be a simpler one. Therefore, yeah, thank you. I would like to give the floor to the minister. Thank you for this question of what that is different EU measures. They do enable to support different labor market measures. But I would like to acknowledge the government, because these elaboration, they are targeted on certain group. And therefore, what is positive at the moment during our crisis is that we need to use our resources, and therefore the EU has help with its funds. And therefore we have been able to launch certain labor market measures. Of course, it cannot be done in a month, but we have clearly been targeted. Direct support funds, other measures. So therefore we are not hurting our measures, because all participants, all stakeholders understand that this adjustment, or the speed of adjustment, is very important.
The OECD team, would you like to also comment on legislative complexity? Probably not. Then it seems that we have time for one more question. There's a question I'd like to ask, but I'll give priority to anyone else who would like to ask. It doesn't seem like we would. Oh, Anneli Habicht has asked in chat. And the question is in Estonian and directed to the minister, I guess. Anneli, would you like to voice the question, or shall I read it out?
You may read it out, thank you.
So the question is, what are the next steps that Estonia is planning to take to relieve the pressure on people who care for their relatives or close ones. So perhaps Tanel, could you answer to that, or shall I take it myself?
Yeah, just a second. Ja, noh, me oleme sel teemal, eks ole, tegelikult kohtunud korduvalt. Hoolduskoormuse lahendamine nüüd otsapidi on küll minu hea kolleegi Signe Riisalo.
Care burden, we have discussed it several times, and we are in very good cooperation. The real need is to add more resources to local governments. It's finances, being support in other ways or services to the people who need to take care of their loved ones. And also, we also talk about people who are institutionalized in care homes. And I do hope that on local government level, we can come out with this long-term package of care homes where there are clear indications of financial support, additional finances. And when you take a clear look at it, then and the people who have to take care of the close ones, the numbers of these people are in need of administrational cooperation. And again, we need more flexibility. For example, if there is a close one who doesn't need 24/7 but needs daily support, but can he actually manage, or can his or her job enable flexible management of job, or when there's a fixed job time? Or can we then say that no, you cannot be employed because you're not able to work? Again, this comes down to money, and again, how much we sort of ping pong the person between different institutions, how much we can coordinate information, and how can we launch sustainable situation that enables the combination of all this information. And again, I repeat, this is not my remit, but in our financial plan, we do plan to ask for these measures. Last question, thank you, from Professor Ehrlich. Thank you. I have a very short question. It can be answered yes or no. Do you understand it correctly that in principle our target groups, when we talk about their areas, that they have not been neglected from the provisions from the if you want to yes or no question, yes, no. We have increased the program, and the European Union has increased also loan measurements, we in our labor markets office, we cannot just turn to our eyes to only
siis olukorras, kus praegu töötukassa igal aastal on seal 50-60 miljonit miinuses ja teatud lisameetmed ka mängu, mis puudutab
budget is in minus, is in 50-60 million euros, but when we want to offer labor market services, then it could be a situation where these labor market insurance policies are acceptable. And as you all knew, if unemployment is increasing, then on the other hand, the number of people who need to receive services is also increasing. So at the moment, there is a balance point, but when the crisis is prolonging, then we need to look at the ways how to provide services in a continuous way.
Suur tänu. Ja ma tahaksin tõmmata meie tänase seminari kokku.
Thank you. I would like to draw a conclusion to our today's seminar and also about this report. If OECD would like to make a short conclusion, then I would like to give the floor.
Thank you very much, Stan. Thank you to the minister. Thank to all of you for being with us for the presentation of the report, but also for your question. As I said, I just want to conclude by thanking the minister and all the colleagues from the ministry, because this cooperation, at least from our point of view, has been extremely fruitful. We have learned a lot also by reviewing in detail the Estonian system, and I'm pretty sure that a number of the lessons we have learned would be made available also to the other countries we are working with. So thank you very much, and I very much look forward to continue our collaboration, close collaboration, and very effective collaboration with Estonia.
Suur tänu ka meie poolt. Tanel võib-olla ütleb meie poolt tänusõnad.
Thank you. Maybe Tanel. I don't have much to add, but sincerely, I think this exchange of information and analysis and this multinational cooperation, OECD, Estonia, our helps to not invite fight, but we need to exchange information and we need to learn. And we have had meetings before with representatives of the EU. I myself have been involved in different projects in health and services. So I think it's clearly that this information and knowledge exchange is very good, and they help us to overcome the situations when we just are empty-headed, when we just don't have any thoughts in our heads. So therefore, I would like to thank you. I would like to thank you, OECD, and cooperation from the Europe. You can read the information on the OECD homepage. Thank you very much. See you soon.